if you guys knew the right language to use, understood the law to the extent that we did, I'd say go do it yourself. Most of the time, dentists would prefer lawyers to sit down and just explain it nonchalantly, as we have. The dentist is going through a transition, implementing best practices. This is just one of them. There's no immediate changes. You have nothing to fear. This is how the law operates. If you don't believe us, go out and talk to an employment lawyer. I mean, it is what it is, right? The alternative is you don't do any of that, and you've got this liability you now have to deal with at the 11th hour when you're trying to sell your practice for $1 million. Fair enough? Okay. Any more questions about employees? It's a big liability. The other liability is associates. So this says, I didn't mean to steal your clients, you didn't mark your territory. So the question is, associates who don't have contracts, can they legally leave, set up shop across the street, compete, take staff, and take copies of the records for the patients that they worked on? What do you guys think? Can they do all those things legally? Kerr's nodding his head. Karen's saying, no way, Jose. What do you think? Okay, Kerr, why do you think they can do that legally?
There's no contract. There's nothing there. It's
no
never
contract.
Won't hold up.
Courts have consistently said in a number of cases, and you can find that all in the ebook or online on our website, that the associate without a contract who's been the exclusive provider of dental services is entitled to copies of those patient records, lists of names, can leave, can set up shop across the street, can compete, and if staff give you guys notice, they can leave and they can go and work for them instead. So, how does this affect you? If you have associates, they better be on contract, they better have non-competes and non-solicits in there, and same with your staff. Your staff should also have non-solicits. Even a little one-page document, give them a little bit of money, part of the closing, get them to sign off on that. That'll give the buyers the comfort that they need to move forward with the deal. If associates and staff don't have at least a non-solicit, deals will collapse. Okay. The landlord and the lease. That's a fitting picture, isn't it? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so what have we seen in a lease that can negatively impact the purchase price? We've talked about demolition clauses. How many of you guys go out every year and do your financial statements for your practice? All of you, right? You got an account. How much does that cost? A couple grand? Yeah? How many of you have to do audited financial statements? Okay? Audited. You got to get an auditor, someone different from your accountant, to come in, spend time auditing. How much does that cost? About 20, 30 grand? And guess what? We've seen leases that say the landlord is entitled to the dentist's annual audited financial statements. Do you think a purchaser trying to buy that practice would be okay divulging that? No way. So deals die. Another one is where the landlord says, I'm happy to transfer the lease to the purchaser. I need 5% of the purchase price. Please. Another one is where the landlord, and they ask for it because they're entitled, because those sneaky lawyers snuck something in during renewal time. The lease says, doesn't matter who installed the leaseholds, landlord owns them. So now the seller is trying to sell, they got a deal in place, there's $100,000 earmarked for leaseholds in that appraisal. And the purchaser is financing $100,000, and the landlord says, whoa, you're trying to sell my leaseholds. $100,000, please. We've seen that. We've seen brutal landlords do brutal things, like keep selling dentists on as guarantors of the lease for the next 10 to 15 years. In case a purchaser defaults for whatever reason on the lease, the selling dentist is still on the hook. Okay, so David likes to say that landlords look for two things when it comes time to transfer the lease. What are they, David?
Money and signatures of guarantors.
Yep. Your signature that you're going to basically be on the hook for the lease in case the purchaser defaults, and money. So landlords are brutal. We don't trust them. We have, I think, dealt with one nice landlord last year. I bought her chocolates and a bottle of tequila. Yeah, they're rare. They're a rare breed. Most of them look like that.
One of the spikes on why a practice may sell for more than appraised, which we didn't talk about, if you own the real estate where the practice is located, that's something very attractive to a purchaser and may drive a premium price, because in that situation, if they're buying the real estate as well, they're not dealing with this person. So just going back, owning real estate where the practice is located in, that's a good thing.
Good thing. Okay, so after the due diligence is done, all the equipment inspection, chart audit, employee contracts, lease review, it's all taken care of. Now we get into the formal agreements. These are the meat and potatoes, 40, 50-page documents, all the bells and whistles on them as to how the transaction is going to actually happen. Who here has bought real estate? Most of your hands should be up. You understand that when you sign that agreement of purchase and sale, you don't own the house. There's something in the future called a closing. And on the closing, more paperwork is exchanged, there's some financing that gets transferred over, and then you get the keys, right? So it's kind of similar when you're buying and selling a dental practice. We kill a lot of trees, unfortunately. Okay, incorporating. This is important. Oh. How many of you guys have one of these? This is a minute book, okay? You should recognize it because it's going to end up saving you a lot of money when you go to sell. Okay? Most dentists who are selling want to sell what's inside here. Shares, the ownership. Right? Those share certificates. This is my professional corporation. Nobody steal it. This is what a share certificate looks like. Okay? Nice little certificate. I own this. This means I own the company and all the assets in the company. Okay? You guys should have professional corporations. Why? Because of this thing called the lifetime capital gains exemption. You guys have all heard of this thing? Okay, so here's how it works. You know that share certificate? So when I created this company, it was worthless, right? Didn't have any assets. And I paid it $1, and it gave me one of these share certificates. What's that share certificate worth?
$1.
Good. Okay, a few years later, I'm working. This company is actually worth something, has assets. It goes up to $801,000. That's the value of the company. What's the share worth? $801,000. I'm going to sell it to David for $801,000. I get the money. Okay? What's my gain on that sale? Well, it cost me $1 and I sold it for $801,000. I got an $800,000 gain. So the CRA says, as per the Income Tax Act, you have to cut all of your capital gains in half. So now we're at $400,000, and you have to pay your personal marginal tax rate on that $400,000. So if my tax rate is close to 50%, that's $200,000 of taxes that I end up paying. Okay. Now the beautiful thing is, government, when you go to sell something like this and you qualify for all the rules, you don't pay any of that. You get up to, it's literally close to $200,000 of tax-free savings. And I'm going to explain all the different requirements that you need to meet to be eligible for that. Okay, you ready? It's a series of tests. Test number 1. See the share certificate? You typically have to own it for at least 2 years before you sell. There's a 2-year holding test. Okay? Some dentists come to us and they say, I want to sell in 6 months. So, well, sucks because there's this rule. If you want to qualify, you want to save that money, you got to hold it. Is there an exception to the rule? Yes. Thank God there's an exception. And here it is. I'm the dentist. I have my own practice. I own it. I have this company. I created it. Here's what I do. I take my practice and I sell it to my company. And I take back shares from my company and I sell those shares to the purchaser. And if I do it all in a very small period of time, like a day, no more 2-year shareholding period test. Okay? So that's the exception to the rule. So
is there tax involved?
Is there a
Tax.
test?
No, tax. It's considered a tax deferred. A rollover.
It's a rollover.
Tax
Yeah.
deferred.
So you sell like $1 million worth of your practice to your professional corporation, and you take back shares worth $1 million, and there's no taxes that you have to pay immediately. Okay, it's a rollover.
When you sell them.
When you sell the shares of your company,
Yes.
you will have to pay capital gains tax. But if you qualify for the lifetime capital gains exemption, you can save up to $200,000 in taxes.
So basically with this trick, you overcome the 2 years holding period.
Yes. Now, there's a few more rules you have to be aware of, because it's not that simple. Second rule is, for the 24 months leading up to the sale, no more than 50% of your assets can be non-active business. Okay? So what the heck does that mean? Well, your practice, it's an active business, right? It's making you money, it's got staff, it's got employees, it's a dental practice. What kind of assets that your company could own are not active business, are just sitting there? Investments, cash, real estate, securities, insurance. All that stuff if it at any point in the 2-year period leading up to your sale makes up more than 50% of its assets, you're not going to qualify. You're going to be offside. So what you have to do, thank God for lawyers and accountants, is purify your corporation leading up to the sale. Get those assets out. Okay?
Cool.
90% rule. So we
Rule
talked
3.
about the 2 years leading up to the sale, no more than 50% can be non-active business assets. There's a third rule, it's even worse. It says on the day of the sale, no more than 10% of your total assets can be non-active business. So you really need to purify right before the sale. Okay? There's some more rules. Yeah, Bob, you had a question?
Cash in the bank. Is
Mhm.
that considered?
Cash is an interesting one because the courts have been faced with cases where they have to ask, is cash just sitting there, or is it being used as a reserve for part of the business? Is it inactive, or is it active? That's an asset, right?
In my current account, I have a certain amount of money which could carry me for a given period of time if I was out of practice.
So the courts might look at the history of the account, how much money you need, is it for working capital, or if it's just a pile of money just sitting in an account and growing, it's non-active business.
So what's the answer at the end of the day?
It depends.
It depends.
Okay. So the next rule, we had a dentist come to us and say, listen, I've satisfied all 3 tests. Okay? And guess what? I want to multiply the lifetime capital gains exemption. How do I do it? I got my spouse to own shares as well. And my spouse also owns shares for 2 years. So we've got it down pat. We're going to sell this sucker for $1.6 million. We're both using our lifetime capital gains exemption. We're going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. I took a look at her minute book. I opened it up. And guess what? The types of shares that her spouse had received were the wrong type. What you need is a type of share that grows in value over time. So there's a gain. What you don't want is a share that can be bought back, redeemed by the company for $1. Those are the types of shares you give family members you don't really trust, but you still want an income split with them. You still want to give them 30, 40 grand a year to save yourself taxes. But here's the problem. They're always going to be worth $1. And when the company redeems them, they're sold back for $1. They were bought for $1, they get sold back, and it was devastating on that dentist because her spouse had the wrong types of shares. What can she do? Well, she could probably sue her accountant and lawyer for negligence, for not following proper instructions, because that's what she wanted to do, multiply the lifetime capital gains exemption. The other thing is what we call an estate freeze. How many of you guys have heard of an estate freeze? Norm, you look confused. You've obviously heard of an estate freeze. No? Okay, estate freeze. So let's say you go back tonight, you look up your corporate minute book, and you're like, shit, she's got the wrong types of shares. According to the articles, these can be bought back for $1. They're not going to grow in time. No lifetime capital gains exemption for her. What are your options? Well, we do an estate freeze. And what that does is that takes all the value of the company and it puts it on you, okay? And then we issue new shares to your spouse. Those are worth nothing. They're worth $1. Because remember, your shares, all the value is tied up with you. And so we can issue her new shares. The only problem is now you got to wait. You got to wait for the value of her shares to appreciate, and you also got to wait 2 years. So it's a waiting game. So just be mindful of that.
If you don't mind me saying, this is why it's smart to think about these issues a few years out before you're going to sell. It's not something you're going to do the day before. These are things you really need to concentrate on when you have a plan for what your exit strategy from practice might be.
Right. So it's really important. How do you maximize the amount of money you're going to keep in your pocket after you sell? Sell the shares of this. Just make sure you qualify. Just make sure. And everything I've spoken about, you don't have to memorize. You don't have to write down. It's where? In the ebook on the websites. It's all there with all the case law. You can read yourself silly if you want. Okay, we're going to move on. The closing. Okay? Exchange of documents. Exchange of money. This is the back of Paul's car, by the way. We took this picture on the way in. You get all? Some real stuff. Okay. And the closing, normally there's an exchange of documents. This is our office. We've got some new bottles of tequila. By the way, we brought some tequila. If you want to try some, it's over there. Drink responsibly. And we only drink tequila after important legal documents have been signed so that nobody is under the influence of alcohol, right? And you may be associating afterwards. You may have the world's worst boss like this guy, and hopefully not. Post-closing, what do? You come with us to Jamaica. David, you want to fill them in on what we're doing in Jamaica?
We're doing a dental outreach program where dentists, dental students, and support team members are going to go down to Jamaica, stay at a Sandals or Beaches resort, get bussed into a community location, maybe a government building, really provide oral health care to those people that don't have the opportunity or can't afford it. So it's a really great way to give back to the community, especially if you've just sold your practice, you have a little extra time, a couple of extra dollars. Give back to the world.
Yeah, I paid a lot of money to go to a Beaches, and I'm sure for those who've been, it's very expensive. This is a subsidized workcation. You pay for your airfare, you pay a small project fee, and you're there for 10 days. Everything's included. Transportation, meals, entertainment. All you got to do for 5 out of those 10 days is volunteer with David and I. Matt, are you coming down? Matt might come down too, bring his wife.
I'm negotiating with them.
Negotiating with his wife, yeah. Lots of fun, good times. You're helping people. I mean, these poor Jamaicans, they've probably never seen a dentist. They make $60 American a week. There's a big need for it. And if we can, this is our first year doing it, if we can actually take this project, give it some flight, we can expand it. So I've been asked by the organizers if I wanted to do it in St. Lucia, Bahamas, or Jamaica. So we're putting all our eggs in Jamaica at the end of August, right before school starts, and hopefully next year we can bring it to Turks. I was in Turks last week. I talked to them about it. I said, guys, you're doing it in Beaches in Jamaica. Why not Beaches in Turks? They said there's a huge need. We'll consider it. So talk to us about it because we're registering people in the next few weeks. Great program. Post-closing, you will always want to update your wills, speak to financial advisors. Summary, David, what do we got?
Get educated, get protected, and then of course make money or save money.